we're gonna try that again, start up again, and see if we can't get this going. My daughter's back there honing her considerable musical talent with LaGrange's premier piano teacher. For any of you other piano teachers in town, I don't mean anything by that, but I'm quite sure that Donna has the very best available piano teacher. So she's back there doing that, and I thought, what better activity could I use to pass my time while Donna's back there perfecting her musical abilities than to spend some time talking with you about just a little bit of this and that. Hello, Todd. Good to see you. You'll notice I'm not wearing glasses, so I'm glad Todd made a comment there and that I could see that comment, because I don't wear glasses when I'm driving, and so I left my office to bring Donna to her piano class and left my glasses laying there on my desk, and got here and picked up my Bible and got ready to start the live stream, and looked at my Bible, and with my Bible this close to my face, it's just black and white blur. So I laid it down here on my leg, and I can see it down there on my leg. I'm glad I was able to see Todd's comment pop up, because I wasn't sure sitting this close to my phone. I've got it stuck up here on my windshield facing me so that we can talk during this time. So I was glad that I can see my Bible laying down here on my leg. I can see the comments when you post comments, and I'm thankful for that. As I said when I started this This and That Thursdays, this is the time, kind of a prep time for our discussion on Mondays. And I know what you're thinking while you're looking at your screen right now. You're thinking, what in the world is that on Norm's head? What is going on there? I'm going to sit like this for the rest of the time. What in the world is that going on Norm's head there? Well, I have a confession to make. I have a problem. I have more monkey brain than other people do, I think. My Chinese zodiac is monkey. So anytime I have a bump or something on my head, or wherever it is, I can't leave it alone. I just keep messing with it until it gets bad, and it looks like that. And so that's what that is. I didn't have an accident. I didn't fall off of a ladder or anything. It's just me being a monkey. So just overlook that. I don't have a makeup artist to get me ready for my live stream. So as we start talking about preparing for Monday's Bible Q&A, be sure you hit that subscribe and notification bell down there, so you'll know when we're on Monday nights, 7 p.m. Eastern, for the Bible Q&A live. And go ahead and post your comments and your questions and your the things that you would like to discuss Monday night. I do have some things that I need to cover Monday night. You'll remember this past Monday, if you watched the Monday night Bible Q&A, that the program got kind of hijacked by the AD 70 cultists, and I do call them a cult. They are a cult. They fit every definition of a cult. It wasn't really my intention to spend the whole program talking about that. I did the one program on that, exposing that for what it was, and I didn't really intend to spend a lot of time on that. I was going to move on from that, but it was in the live chat and being discussed there, posted on my website, and so I went ahead and did that, and we may do more of that. I don't know, but there was a question about the Book of Enoch that I wanted to discuss in more depth, so I'll probably spend some more time on that Monday. And I said probably a couple of weeks ago that after doing so many back-to-back Bible Q&As dealing with different issues in the Catholic Church, that I was going to move on from the Catholic Church. And I didn't want people to get the impression that the whole point of Bible Q&A is just to bash the Catholic Church or attack the Catholic Church. There's a lot of questions out there. People do ask me questions about why does this church do that, or I'm in this church and we do this and I don't see that in the Bible. How, why is that? And so we do have a lot of questions dealing with stuff like that, and I do spend a lot of time talking about denominationalism. Denominationalism has no biblical authority, and we talk about that when we talk about Bible authority and the things dealing with Bible authority. Let's see, I'm having trouble reading. Like I said, I don't have my glasses. So let's see. Matt says, "How are you?" Thank you, Matt. I appreciate it. I'm doing well. I hope you're doing well also. Let's see. Brother Greenlight says, "Do you think it is possible for those who are preterists and those who think Christ will return in the future can both be a part of the one church? In other words, well, let me see. In other words, does their doctrine make their salvation void?" That is a good question, and based on what they teach, the nature of the doctrine they're teaching that Christ has already come. They're teaching, no problem. I was able to decipher it out. It's okay. They're teaching that there's not going to be any future judgment. That the judgment has already happened. That there's nothing coming in the future. That when we die, that's it. We basically face our judgment at that time that we die. And the way that they're binding that now, I don't. They have been referring to me as teaching the AD 33 false doctrine, as they say it. Well, I challenged them. Go back and find anywhere where you've heard me say anything about AD 33 other than that. That's not the right date. I know AD 33 is the traditional date of Acts chapter 2, but it's more accurately AD 30 because Christ, the dating of that calendar that we base our years on is about 4 years off. Christ was born actually about 4 BC. And so, I always say AD 30. So, but they call it the AD 33 false doctrine. So they're saying that, I would like to know, and that's a good question, that I'd like to put to them, I guess. I would like to know what it is that they believe is false doctrine about what I teach concerning AD 30. That is, the church was established in Acts chapter 2 on the day of Pentecost, AD 30, after the ascension of Christ back to heaven. So, you're saying that that's false doctrine. You're calling that the AD 33 false doctrine. Well, I say AD 30, but I know what you're talking about when you say AD 33. So you're saying that that's false doctrine. So, not only what they're teaching, but the way that they're binding it. I heard or read rather something that Steve, or maybe I think maybe he said it directly to me in a correspondence that we had, that this understanding of the destruction of Jerusalem as the fulfillment of the second coming. Now he's saying it's a sign that the second coming had already happened. I don't even know what that means, but okay, did the second coming happen at AD 70, or is it a sign that the second coming had already happened? or what point between AD 30 and AD 70 did it happen? It's just every time you talk to them, they've got some other thing that they're throwing in there. So yes, I do believe it does affect their salvation. I do not believe that I don't believe that they can hold to that doctrine and be faithful Christian, be faithful disciples of Christ. They are wayward. They are false teachers. It's the same apostasy. It would be the same thing to say about the Catholic Church. Well, since the Catholic Church was the outgrowth of the first century church, is what they teach really false doctrine that affects their salvation? Well, yes, they've departed from the truth. Well, what's the difference then for the AD 70 cult? They teach false doctrine that denies the truth. And so, yes, I do believe it affects their salvation. Let's see. Now, like I said, I'm having trouble focusing on the comments because I forgot my glasses. But let's see. Jesus spoke about only praying for those who, right. Matt, post that in the comments so that I'll see that when we have the program Monday night, and we'll talk about that. What source did you study to find out about AD 30 being the more accurate date? Well, if you go back and look at the historical setting of Herod and Herod's persecution, how Herod sent to kill the children of Bethlehem from 4 years old and are from 2 years old and under. What was it, 4 or 2? I think it was 2 years and under. Well, I don't want to turn over there right now and say, but he sent to kill the children of Bethlehem. You got the wise men coming from the east, meeting Herod, then going to Bethlehem, and when they go to Bethlehem, it says that he was in a house. So the nativity scene where the wise men are at the manger, that's not even what it says. It says that the light, the miraculous light in the sky, that is translated as star, led them to a house where Jesus was in the house. Well, when you put all that together, there's a span of time there, and Herod had actually died before that. If Jesus was born in 0, what we say is 0, well, the Herod that was killing the children in Bethlehem was already dead, and so it doesn't fit the historical time frame. And when you look at the historical time frame, it would have been about 4 BC, and so it's pretty well known. If you go and do some research on the Gregorian calendar and the dating of the Gregorian calendar, it's pretty well known that it's about 3 or 4 years off, which would put the establishment of the church in AD 30. So that's why I typically say that Acts chapter 2 is in AD 30. But that's whether you say AD 30, AD 33 is really irrelevant. It's just one's more accurate than the other. But I would like to know what it is about teaching that the church was established on the day of Pentecost in Acts chapter 2, whatever date you put on it, that the church was established in Acts chapter 2, whether it's AD 30 or AD 33. What is it about that that's false doctrine? Because that's what they've been charging me of teaching the false AD 33 doctrine. Okay, well, what's false about it? What's false about teaching that the church was established in Acts chapter 2 on the day of Pentecost after the ascension of Christ? That is the harmonized truth of God's word. All of those biblical prophecies about the church, they all line up at Acts chapter 2. And so how is that false doctrine? Let's see. Todd, it looks like, yeah, that's John chapter 17, verse 20. Right. And that's what I was asking Matt if he would post that in the comments to the video so that it'll come up on Monday. I'll see that Monday, and in preparation for Monday's program, and we'll talk about that on Bible Q&A. Yeah, I did get that. I did get that message you sent me, uh, and it's no problem. I'm happy to discuss any questions that you post, and we'll do that on Monday night. Um, I have a question, and I had commented about the stuff we covered about the Catholic Church. Well, in discussing these things about the Catholic Church, I felt like, okay, we've been on the Catholic Church too long. Need to move on. Talk about some other stuff. Did a pretty good, run of episodes dealing specifically with things about the Catholic Church. And just about the time I decide that, okay, I'm going to move on from talking about the Catholic Church and give the Catholic viewers a break, if you will, because we have several viewers in the audience that are Catholics, and they're very active in the comments. So I look at the news yesterday, and I see this grand jury report in Pennsylvania regarding I don't remember exactly how many dioceses. I think it was at least a couple of dioceses around the Pittsburgh area. And what this investigation had found in that area, and it had been a long, ongoing investigation of, I don't want to get too explicit, but of abuses in the Catholic priesthood, gross, immoral, horrible abuses in the Catholic priesthood, and it wasn't only in those dioceses around the Pittsburgh area. The report said that it used words like organized, systematic, cover up, that stretched all the way back to the Vatican. That it was something that was known and was being covered up, and in an organized way being facilitated and accommodated what was going on there. And they identified over 300 priests and bishops that were involved in this, and it was really horrible to read about it, the things that they uncovered, and the things that were known to the hierarchy in the Catholic Church. Just horrible, horrible stuff. When you look over at 1 Timothy chapter 4, beginning verse 1, where Paul says, "Now the Spirit expressly says that in latter times some will depart from the faith, giving heed to deceiving spirits and doctrines of demons, speaking lies in hypocrisy, having their own conscience seared with a hot iron, forbidding to marry, and commanding to abstain from foods which God created to be received with thanksgiving by those who believe and know the truth." And so after reading that report, I don't know how any more of a seared conscience a person could have than to be able to do the kind of things that were in that report, the things that they did to children, and how organized it was. Over, well, I don't know, it was 99 of the more than 300 priests and bishops that were identified. 99 of them in those Pittsburgh dioceses. How is it that so many predators, child predators, end up in the same place, in the same area, working together in an organized way to abuse children? How does that happen? Well, it was an organized effort, a cooperative effort amongst child predators to do those things to children. And one part of the report said that they even had a system where when they had groomed a child to be receptive to their abuses, to be receptive to what they were doing, that they would give them a special crucifix. Now, can you imagine that? And I'm not Catholic. You all know I'm not Catholic. But Catholics put a great deal of religious significance to a Catholic. A crucifix is religiously significant, and these priests would give a special crucifix to these children that had been groomed to be receptive to their abuses, so that other priests in that organization, in that cooperation of predators, they could see that they were wearing that special crucifix and know that they were receptive, that they had been prepared to be open and receptive to their abuses. So they were basically wearing a sign. They were hanging a sign around these children so that other predator priests would be able to recognize them. I mean, talk about doctrine of demons and a seared conscience. How could you do those things to children? I'm personally of the opinion that child abusers, child predators, doing things like that to children is a crime that is deserving of death. So now here within, what, has it even been 3 weeks? Within 3 weeks, there's 2 things come up in the Catholic Church. And, you know, it almost makes you wonder, are they coordinated? Because one, the Pope comes out and says capital punishment is unacceptable under any circumstances, changing the traditional stance of the Catholic Church. And it doesn't matter how much people say, well, that wasn't really a change. It was. And I showed the historical precedent, the historical position of the Catholic Church and how this is a change. And then within just a couple of weeks after that, you come out with this grand jury report identifying hundreds of child predator priests, a crime that in any sane society, amongst any right-thinking lawmakers, should be punishable by death. You know, Congress voted on that. Tell me what you think. Should victimizing children the way that these priests were doing, stealing their innocence, corrupting their innocent hearts, making it almost impossible for them to be open to God in any way. And here I come down the road wanting to teach them the truth of God's word, and yet in their mind all they can think about, somebody who claims to be speaking for God just wants to abuse them, just wants to take advantage of them, just wants to hurt them. And people ask me sometimes if there's degrees of punishment and reward. Man, if there's not a hotter place in hell for people like that, then, you know, I don't know. It is astounding to me. Don't you think that somebody that would do that to a child is deserving of death, has forfeited their right to live? Because they have destroyed this child's life for the rest of their life. No matter how much counseling they get, no matter how much they work to overcome these things, it's always going to be there. It's always going to affect them for the rest of their life. They're always going to struggle with it. They're always going to have trust issues. They're always going to have insecurity issues. They're always going to have problems dealing with what was done to them by someone that they should be able to trust. And what we hear about isolated cases, regardless of any religion. Any religion, you can find isolated cases where people abuse their position, and being in a position of power, being in a position of authority, they abuse that and take advantage of people. You can find isolated cases of that no matter where you look. So, I'm not saying that this is something that's unique to the Catholic Church, but this was not an isolated case. Read the grand jury if you can stomach it. I mean, you may want to read it in the bathroom in case you have to vomit, because it is gross. Disgustingly gross. That's why I refer to that passage of having a seared conscience. It was organized. It was something that was documented. That's how the grand jury found a lot of the information they found, is because a bishop had documented instances of it, not reported to the authorities. The priests were not turned over to the police. They were not criminally punished for their crimes. They committed crimes against children, and it was covered up. Not only was it covered up, but bishops in positions of power facilitated it. There was I don't know if this was part of the grand jury report or if it was something related, but an instance where someone that was known to have a proclivity for children was purposely put in a position to be alone with children. And when this person gave in to their sickness, it was used against them to blackmail them into keeping quiet about this organized ring of child predators in the Catholic Church. The report identified over 300 of them. Over 300 in total, 99 of them in one area, all working together. In things like, like I said, I don't want to get too graphic, and but I mean, it's horrible. So to the Catholic viewers out there, how do you not see that the kind of hierarchical structure that you have, that is unbiblical, it's unscriptural, it's not according to the organization of the original first century church that you claim to be? You can't find it anywhere in the Bible. How do you not see that this kind of structure lends itself to the kinds of abuses that just came out in this grand jury report? And not only just came out in this grand jury report, but what was the historical precedent for the Protestant Reformation to begin with? Why was there even a Protestant Reformation to begin with? Wasn't it because of corruptions in the Catholic Church that had to do with abuses of power, because of the kind of structure it is? Now, I'm not saying this, I'm not trying to be hateful or mean-spirited by no means. But I will tell you this: if it comes between taking up for a grown man or taking up for an innocent child, I'm going to take up for the innocent child every single time. I'm going to take the side of the innocent child every time. How someone could put their loyalty to an organization over their love of a child and the protection of a child, I don't understand that. I just can't comprehend that. But that's what they did, because they didn't want to damage the integrity or whatever integrity is there, I don't know, but damage the integrity or damage the public opinion of the Catholic Church. Because of that, they kept these things covered up. They didn't report things to the authorities. Now that's what should have happened. If it was known that these priests were doing these things, it should have been reported to the authorities. They should have been criminally punished, but they kept it covered up. They allowed it to develop into an organized ring of child abusers. Uh, uh, the homosexual bishops that were in positions of authority to put certain priests in certain places put 99 of them in one place. How do you not see that is what happens when you corrupt the biblical pattern, when you get away from the biblical pattern? See, that can't happen in the Church of Christ. Now, that's not to say that you can't go and you can't find isolated instances of abuse in churches of Christ, or in any church for that matter. But it's just that it's isolated, because the Church of Christ, being autonomously organized, the way the Bible says, each congregation having its own elders, that is, having its own leadership. There's not a earthly headquarters for the church, because we don't read about one in the Bible. Our head is in heaven, and his name is Jesus. He is the head of the church, not a man on earth with a hierarchy under him. Each congregation is individually responsible for following the head, Christ. So if something like that happens, it only affects that congregation, not the whole worldwide church. You can't have these kinds of cover-up rings, because the structure's not there to support one. And so how do you not see that it's a problem with the structure? And like I said, I'm not trying to be mean-spirited. I'm not trying to be hurtful in any way. But what do you think is going to happen when you institute such doctrines as the celibacy of the priesthood? Look, just answer this question. Should it be surprising that a person that would be attracted to a position that requires celibacy, requires this person to not be married? See, he doesn't have to pretend. He doesn't have to try to maintain a phony marriage because he's in a position that requires him to not be married. To feign celibacy, as it were. And in that position, to be in a role of authority, of mentoring, and having influence over young children. What kind of person do you think is going to be attracted to that kind of position? Now, I know that, it's supposed to be, ideally, it's supposed to be somebody. Now, this is in the Catholic, ideology. It's supposed to be someone who is so devoted, so chaste, so spiritually minded that they don't feel the desires of the flesh. I know that's the ideal. But when you're talking about fallible men, you're talking about people who have sicknesses. It shouldn't be surprising that they would be attracted to a position where no one expects them to be married, no one expects them to keep company with in normal relationships, no one expects them to socialize in normal ways, and they get to be in positions of trust. They get to be in positions of authority and positions of influence over children. Why would it be surprising that child predators, homosexual child predators, would be the very ones that would be attracted to that type of position? The Bible doesn't speak anywhere about a celibate priesthood. Not even the special priesthood in the Old Testament, where you had a priesthood of one tribe. They weren't even, the Bible doesn't command them to be celibate. It gives them instructions about where they were to get their wives, and that, who they could and couldn't marry. It doesn't command them to be celibate. And in the New Testament, it's the priesthood of believers. There's not even a special separate priesthood in the New Testament. All Christians are priests. And celibacy is not commanded. So what why would it be surprising that homosexuals and child predators would be attracted to a position where they can facilitate their desires, facilitate their sickness? Why would that be surprising? So, I'd like to discuss that. I've seen a lot of comments popping up. Let me go back and see if I can scroll through them. Let's see. What time is it? Donna's fixing to be coming out here in just a minute, so I'm going to have to get off of here. Let's see. Well, there's a lot of comments there. So let's go back. Okay, there's where I left off. Crime syndicate, the Vatican. That's the way it sounds. Gold crosses around their necks. That's right. They gave them. They gave these groomed children, the ones that were groomed to be receptive to the abuses of these child predator priests. They gave them a special gold crucifix, a symbol of religious significance to Catholics, and they're using it to identify the children that had been groomed to be receptive to the child predator priest. It blows my mind. How can you not see that as the doctrine of demons and a sickness being covered up and even facilitated in the Catholic Church? It blows me away. Gold crosses around their necks. That's right. Most likely it came from the top Vatican down to the local Catholic churches. Well, this grand jury report did trace the extent of the cover-up, the extent of, it's really, it sounds like something out of a movie, but it's not. It's real. This cover-up and conspiracy all the way back to the Vatican. They started there in Pennsylvania, in Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh grand jury did the report. They started there in Pennsylvania, and before they were done, they had identified over 300 child predators, both parish priests, bishops, and traced it well beyond the diocese that they were initially investigating. And it blows my mind that so many of them were in one place. 99 child predator priests in one area. And that's, that was discovered here in America. What about these third world countries where the Catholic Church just has total reign over large areas? What are they getting away with in those areas where they don't have the kind of criminal justice system that we have in this country, where they don't have the kind of investigatory powers that we have in this country? What are they getting away with in other parts of the world? If that was discovered here, man, what might be going on in other places? It's terrifying. Psychopathic people. You'd have to be a psychopath to do the things that they did. No conscience. That's what having a conscience seared with a hot iron means. It means that you're past feeling. You can't feel. It's like a brand. You brand the flesh. Well, if you stick that, You don't feel it. The nerves are dead. Well, that's the only way they could do what that's what a psychopath is. Psychopath doesn't feel anything. They have conscience seared with a hot iron. Let's see, government controlled by psychopathic persons as well. Well, it makes you question sometimes what kind of people are attracted to positions of power, doesn't it? Most leaders lean toward that path. The unholy Roman Catholic Church has been doing that for hundreds and hundreds of years. Yeah, that's what I was talking about. Back, you go all the way back to the Protestant Reformation. Why? Uh, why did the reformers uh, do what they did? And they didn't. They never intended to leave the Catholic Church. They got excommunicated because they were trying to clean up the corruptions that were in the Catholic Church. There's a kid running behind me. I don't want him on the camera. So there's all these corruptions in the Catholic Church, and you you just have to wonder, you know, how extensive is it really? Let's see. Being toward sexual abusers toward children, they transfer them to different cities. Yeah, and see, that's what's been going on for a long time. That came out years and years ago. How these predator priests, instead of being reported to the authorities, would just get transferred to another diocese. They would say, well, they got counseling, they're better now, and we transferred them to another diocese. That's not okay. You know, you start putting child predators in my community, and yeah, I don't know. I don't want to say anything. They transfer them to a different city and churches. Most people like that are born psychopathic. Well, you know, I question the whole, you know, born that way thing. You know, I know that's what the homosexual agenda tries to say, even though there's no evidence for it at all. There's, you know, you take identical twins. Well, if it was genetic, if it was inborn, well, then they would both be of the same persuasion, but they're not. So, you know, that's one of the best evidences I've seen against the born that way thing. And so now with things like being a psychopath and having no emotions and things like that, you know, I really haven't looked into that much about whether or not that's like a birth defect or a mental disorder from birth or not. But I mean, that's what psychopath means. It means they don't have any feelings. They can do anything. They can do anything to anybody, and they don't feel it. And I think there's a lot of psychopaths that never take a criminal path. They function normally in society, but they just don't have any feelings. Let's see. I think it came from the Vatican. Born psychopaths. Crime syndicate from the Vatican, most likely. Demonic. I heard the news say it's past the statute of limitations. See, I heard that too. That a lot of these priests that were identified have passed the statute of limitations for criminal punishment in these cases. Why should there be a statute of limitations for abusing a child? For the statute of limitations is not passed for the damage it did to those children that were the victims of that abuse. The statute of limitations has not passed for the psychological damage it did to them. So why should there be a statute of limitations on when you can punish these priests for what they did? I don't understand the whole statute of limitations thing for that. Now, I know with some things, statute of limitations is there for a reason, but with child abuse, this kind of abuse, why should there be a statute of limitations? Go get them, string them up. They're not fit to live in decent society. Get rid of them. That's what the death penalty's for. There shouldn't be a statute of limitations on that kind of sickness. I'm getting a little carried away. Let's see. Let me go back. I lost my place. Um, let's see. One that way. Please read the whole. It looks like some internal discussion going on there. Uh, let's see. So you say every psychopath is born that way? I don't think so. You know, I, I don't know whether psychopathic, that problem is a birth defect, and that's what it would be. It would be a birth defect that your emotions don't develop right or whatever. Like I know autism. That's. I'm not saying that. Please don't misunderstand what I'm saying. I'm not saying that people with autism are psychopaths, but that is something from birth. Well, psychopathy is the absence of emotions, and you can just do anything to anybody and not feel guilt, or you have no conscience, basically. And so, I don't know if that would be an inborn thing or not. Let's see. Um, there's a lot of internal discussion there. hmm Uh, I'm against the horrific way of thinking and actions. It is horrific. I mean, it does. It sounds like a horror movie. Uh, I'm if you decide to go and read that grand jury report, just know you have to you have to have a strong stomach to read it. It is horrific and deeply deeply disturbing. I don't see how anybody could read what they did to children and not come away with the conclusion that these men are deserving of death. These men should be given the death penalty. Throw statute of limitations out. No statute of limitations on doing these kinds of things to people. They're deserving of death. Put them on death row, and death row should move a lot quicker than it does. Uh, Abnormal and demonic. It is horrific. Let's see. Psychopath. Let's see. Mental illness isn't a sin in and of itself. It's how we act out from it that can be sinful. Yeah, and uh, you know, just because someone has a mental illness doesn't mean that it justifies the things that they do. Um, let's see. That is a psychopath. Yeah, psychopath is somebody that has no emotions, right? That's what a psychopath is. Oh, sociopath. Yeah, you said that is a sociopath. Uh, I'm just referring to the psychopath comments and showing that. Okay. Well, um, we've burned through our time. I appreciate you watching. And like I said, post your comments. I know we go through the live chat during the program, but for me to come back and reply on Monday in the Bible Q&A program, uh, put it down in the comments on the video so that when I go back and I look through the comments to get ready for the Monday night program, those comments will be there, and I'll be able to reply to that. Thanks for watching.